Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at Job chapters 4 and 5 in our continuing study of the book of Job. Let's go to an overview first of the entire book. We've seen this in part. This is a little bit more detailed. Chapters 1 and 2, you had the prologue, and then the poetry, the dialogues, the discourses started with Job speaking in chapter 3. And we're going to see over the next, this is actually most of the book, chapters 3 through 31, are going to be Job speaking to his three friends, and he will speak, and they will speak, and he'll answer, and they'll answer. And in chapter 33, we'll see another person there that hasn't even been mentioned before, Elihu, and he's going to speak in chapters 33 through 37. He's sort of the central core of the book. And then in chapter 38, God shows up. And he'll speak, and everybody else is going to be quiet. And finally, chapter 42, that will be the end of this, almost like wrapping up the whole story. So chapters 1 and 2 and chapter 42 are the prose part. Everything else is poetry, and we're now in the poetic section. We begin with this person, Eliphaz the Temanite. He's one of these three friends of Job. They've been there with Job for 7 days and 7 nights, and then Job finally broke the silence, and now Eliphaz answers, and he says, "If one ventures a word with you, will you become impatient? You're not going to necessarily want to hear what I have to say, but who can refrain from speaking?" And so now he speaks, and he points out, look, Job has counseled others in the past. Notice how he says it. You have admonished many. You've strengthened weak hands. Your words have helped the tottering to stand. You have strengthened feeble knees. You've done all these things in the past, but now you need some counsel. It's your turn to receive counsel. And so now it has come to you. And remember, he said, "Are you going to be impatient?" And he repeats that again. But now it comes to you. Now it's Job's turn to receive counsel, and you're receiving patient. You're impatient at what's taking place. It touches you, and you are dismayed. Is not your fear of God your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Where is your confidence? Where is your hope? It was easy for you to speak with hope and with confidence when you weren't going through anything, but now you are going through things, and so you need to hear some counsel. Notice, is not your fear of God your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Job is, it has your relationship with God somehow slipped. Don't look now, but is your integrity not all there? And so he's asking the question. Now remember, Eliphaz, as well as the other friends that are there, they didn't get to do what you already did as the reader. You got to peek into the presence of God and hear this dialogue with God versus the Satan, the enemy. And that's happening. They don't know that. And so they're making some assumptions, and Eliphaz is going to make some assumptions in these two chapters. Remember now, and here's his question. He's got a basic thesis, is that righteous people do not suffer. Notice how he says it. Whoever perished being innocent, or where were the upright destroyed? Righteous people don't suffer. According to what I've seen, notice they didn't perish, they weren't destroyed. According to what I've seen, those who plow iniquity and those who sow trouble, those are the ones that harvest it. You're perishing, you're being destroyed, you're having trouble. Maybe the problem isn't with the circumstances, maybe the problem is with you. Notice he continues, verse 9, by the breath of God they perish, by the blast of his anger they come to an end. Job, you're going through hugely difficult times. What? And the implication is not stated, but you can't help but see the implication. What did you do? Are you innocent? Are you upright? Or are you the one, by contrast, being perished? Are you being destroyed? Are you coming to an end? What went wrong, Job? And now notice the roaring of the lion. And what I'm going to mention is some Hebrew words here. Notice the roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion, and the teeth of the young lions are broken. The lion perishes for lack of prey, and the whelps of the lioness are scattered. And in our English, we've really just got one one word for lion. Notice we describe the lion, the fierce lion, the young lions, the whelps of the lioness, but Hebrew has quite a few more words. Now, this is unusual because Hebrew doesn't have that big of a vocabulary compared to English, but the lion is the aryah, and then the fierce lion is the shakal, and then the young lions are the kefirim, and then the lion perishes. This is not the same word for lion that we saw earlier. This is the laish, and the whelps of the lioness, the beni, which means actually literally the sons of le lebo, the one, actually another word for a lion, or in this case the lioness, because it's the sons, are scattered. And it's not that the words are so significant, but he is waxing poetic in bringing all of these different terms for a lion. Maybe you ought, when the lion roars, you ought to listen because there's some things happening here. Verse 12, now a word was brought to me stealthily. And Eliphaz is going to be describing how he has had a vision, an insight, a spark of clarity. Notice how he says it. A word was brought to me stealthily, and my ear received a whisper of it. It was stealthily, it was a whisper amid disquieting thoughts from the visions of the night when deep sleep falls on men. Dread came upon me and trembling and made all my bones shake. I've had this insight, and boy, it's just earth shattering. It is just overturning me. It is a gut feeling that I'm having. He continues in verse 15 with the spirit of this vision. Notice a spirit passed by my faith. Now, when he says a spirit, that term there, ruach, can refer to either wind or spirit. It's the same. It's the same expression. Can have two different meanings. But here it doesn't seem just like the wind is blowing. A spirit passed by my face. The hair of my flesh bristled up. It, that is the spirit, stood still, but I could not discern its appearance. A form was before my eyes, and there was silence. And then I heard a voice. And what did that voice say? Notice he goes on to this voice. Verse 17, can mankind, and here's the question, can mankind be just before God? The term there, enosh, it's one of the words for a man or mankind. Now he's going to change terms here. Can a geber, can a man be pure before his maker? Notice the reference to God, his maker, is speaking of the same thing. This is poetry. You say it, and then you say it the same thing with different terms. Verse 18, he, that is God, and notice what he said, men are sinners. Can mankind be just before God? Yes, you were a relatively just person, but not before God. Can man be pure before his maker? Um, and it's a rhetorical question. The answer is obviously no. Verse 18, he, that is God, puts no trust even in his servants, not let alone mankind, even in his servants. And against his angels, he charges error, that not only are men sinners, but even angels don't compare to God. God is much bigger and better than they are. Um, so verse 19, how much more those who dwell in houses of clay? This is especially true of humans. If God puts no trust even in his servants, his angelic servants, his angels, his messengers, then how much more those who dwell in houses of clay? This he's speaking of these human, frail, mortal bodies, which in Job's case is becoming more mortal by the second, whose foundation is in the dust, who are crushed before the moth. These are all descriptions of humans compared to angels. And if God doesn't trust even his servants, angels, in the way he trusts himself, if they are less than him, then how much more are we? And so he focuses now on the going and the coming of mankind. Between morning and evening, they, that is people, they're broken in pieces. Just look at your body, the way you've broken. And we're all going to end up that way in a sense. Not that we're going to be struck with that kind of loss or that kind of plagues, but we all die. Unobserved, they perish forever. That is, people is not their tent cord plucked up within them. They die, uh, and yet without wisdom. And so compared to God's wisdom, we are so much less. And that's true. By the way, notice Eliphaz hasn't seen all that's true, but he hasn't seen what's going on in the presence of God. But what he sees in this vision is true. Now, chapter 4, and we just finished chapter 4. We're going to go on to chapter 5. Chapter 4 started off where Eliphaz is saying, Job, you've been a counselor in the past, but now it's time to receive counsel. And God is righteous, and he blesses the righteous, and you have not been blessed lately. And I've received the spiritual message, and the spiritual message is that all have sinned. By the way, notice everything that's said here is true. And now he continues into chapter 5 and verse 1. Call now, is there anyone who will answer you? And to which of the holy ones will you turn? Notice we had reference to the sons of God way back in chapter 1 and God's messengers and his angels. Who are you going to turn to, Job? For anger slays the foolish man, and jealousy kills the simple. I have seen the foolish taking root, and I cursed his abode immediately, that indication of the one who is foolish. And so he's describing now the way of the fool. And I think we get a sense that Eliphaz is thinking of Job in those terms. And in a sense, he's sort of right. Not that Job is being foolish, but Job doesn't see all of God's wisdom. And nor do any of us. We're going to be given a glimpse of that. He continues in this way of the fool. His sons, that is, the fools of the sun, are far from safety. They are even oppressed in the gate, and there's no deliverer. His harvest, the hungry devour. The fool goes and he does all of his work, and then he loses it all. The hungry devour and take it to a place of thorns. The schemer is eager for that is the wealth of the fools. So notice how the fool he builds up he builds up his treasure, his wealth, his wisdom, and it all is lost. We continue verse 6. For affliction does not come from the dust. Notice it doesn't come from nowhere. Affliction just doesn't happen. Bad things don't happen, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. For man is born for trouble, as sparks fly upward. And the point is that bad things happen for a reason. And again, there is some truth to that. And now, we've already seen some of the reason. Now, I don't know that we've seen all of it, but in chapters 1 and 2, we saw some of the reason. Now, Eliphaz didn't see that reason. He's speaking, in a sense, more than he knows. But what he says, again, is true. Bad things do happen for a reason, even if we don't always see any of the reason or maybe all of the reason. You see, men are sinners, and they suffer the results of their sin. That's a true statement. And instead of trusting in men, Eliphaz is saying, turn to God and trust in him. Those are good words. That's true. Even though he's speaking out of his ignorance too, what he says is true. But as for me, Eliphaz says, I would seek God, and I would place my cause before God. And now he's going to, having mentioned that, he's going to describe God. So we saw the way of the fool, now it's the way of the Lord. God who does great and unsearchable things, wonders without number. That's true. Verse 10, he gives rain on the earth and sends water on the field, so that he sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. Verse 12, He frustrates the plotting of the shrewd so that their hands cannot attain success. He captures the wise by their own shrewdness, and the advice of the cunning is quickly thwarted. By day they meet with darkness and grope at noon as in the night. And so what he's saying is, look, there's this conflict between God and the wicked, and God's going to win. He wins over the wicked both now, sometimes it doesn't look that way, but he does, as well as in the future. Wait long enough, it's going to happen. Verse 15, continuing the same idea, but he saves the sword. He, that is God, saves from the sword of their mouth, and the poor from the hand of the mighty. So notice the sword of their mouth, the people that are saying evil things and doing things with their mouth, the poor from the hand of the mighty. And because of that, the helpless has hope, and unrighteousness must shut its mouth. God is going to win. The unrighteous will fail. The sword of their mouth, the hands of the mighty, the unrighteous, they're going to fail. God is going to win over the wicked. Verse 17, behold, how happy is the man whom God reproves. So do not despise the discipline of the Almighty, for he inflicts pain and gives relief. He wounds, and his hands also heal. Turn to the Lord, because God both reproves, don't despise his discipline. Notice what he's saying. These things are all true. Now, we said they don't necessarily apply to Job's situation, but everything that Eliphaz is saying is true. In fact, when we read about that, don't despise the discipline of the Almighty, that rings of something that's actually quoted in the New Testament. It might be that this passage, among others, the writer to the Hebrews has in mind when he says, my son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor faint when you're reproved by him. And now he goes on to build up a whole case about how the Lord, he disciplines his own sons. That's actually a good thing. If you didn't receive discipline, you might not be his. That's not in view here in Job, but there are New Testament echoes of this passage. We continue from 6 troubles, and God is going to see protecting his people, and God does. That doesn't mean that there are no exceptions to that. Job is an exception. But notice, from 6 troubles he will deliver you, even in 7 evil will not touch you. And that's a very poetic way of describing, yet for 6, even in 7, we see that both in the Psalms and in the Proverbs, and here we're seeing it in Job. Notice what he says, in famine he will redeem you from death. In war, these are all bad things that can happen, and in war from the power of the sword. You will be hidden from the scourge of the tongue, people saying bad things, and you will not be afraid of violence when it comes. And so the picture here is God protecting his people, and he does, although there are exceptions. There are exceptions to the rule, and Job is living out in one of those exceptions. Maybe you are as well. Continuing the same idea, God protects his people. You will laugh at violence and famine, these bad things that happen. You will not be afraid of wild beasts, for you will be in league with the stones of the field. And the beasts of the field, and other bad things, will be at peace with you. Continuing God's protection, verse 24, you will know that your tent is secure. You will visit your abode, your tent, your abode, the place where you live, and fear no loss. You will know also that your descendants will be many, and your offspring as the grass of the earth. Job has just seen his descendants, his offspring, all died, and Eliphaz says, "Look, if you're right with God, here's going to be the things that you will enjoy. You will come to the grave in full vigor." Doesn't say you're not going to ever die, but notice you're going to be having all your faculties. You'll come to the grave in full vigor, like the stacking of grain in the season. You'll come to your final harvest, and it will be well. But we're finding out throughout this entire story that there are exceptions to the rule, and yet Yet, in spite of these exceptions, these things still are, they have some great truth to them. And so he comes to the end. Behold this. We have investigated, and so it is. Hear it and know for yourself. So the words of Eliphaz, they are true, but they are not the complete story. They're only part of the truth. And as Christians living today, where we have, the greater part of the story, we have all of the scriptures. I'm not saying we have all truth, but what we have is true. We can see where this comes about, and the rest of the story really is seen in the person of Jesus, the one who came and took on suffering and pain for us. He died in our place, suffering that which we deserved. This is the part that can be investigated. This is the part that we preach, so you can hear it and know for yourself. And the point that we see in the cross is that the road to redemption leads through the path of suffering. It was the case for Jesus, but also as we come and believe in him, it is very oftentimes the case for us as well. And we see this in the story of Job, but we also see it with greater clarity in the message of the cross. Jesus came and he said, those who would follow me, what did he say? Pick up your cross and follow me. That there is a sense in which we are identified through faith in his death, burial, and resurrection, and we participate, at least to a certain degree. Not that our death and suffering doesn't pay for our sins, but no, we are identified and we share just a touch, just a bit, in what he experienced as we are joined with Jesus.